As obvious as it sounds, the Justice Department's Inspector General just found the missing text between those two FBI agents. What did he do? Well, he merely took possession of the phones. Can you imagine? The FBI claimed over the weekend it couldn't find the 5 months of text between Strzok and Page. But it took the Inspector General just 2 days after senators demanded the answers. Good for him. Also breaking tonight, Fox News can now confirm that President Trump ordered the firing of Special Counsel Robert Mueller last June, but he backed down after White House counsel Don McGahn and others convinced him not to. That news was first reported by the New York Times earlier tonight. Let's explore that and a lot else with former Harvard law prof Alan Dershowitz in Miami and in Orlando, Congressman Ron DeSantis, Republican from Florida, and here in studio, my friend, attorney, and Democratic strategist, Scott Bolden. All right, we have a lot to get through. I'm going to do it together. Professor, let's start with you on this New York Times report that the president wanted to axe Mueller, and McGahn said, can't do it. You do it. I'm out.
Well, it just shows you that everybody should listen to their lawyers, whether you're the president of the United States or anybody else. McGahn's advice was very, very sound advice. Look, the president has the constitutional authority to fire anybody in the executive branch. The Supreme Court has held that. On the other hand, it would have been very unwise politically, and it would have sounded like an admission of some kind of guilt. He's so much better off following his current lawyer's advice as well, which says, look, be nice to Mueller, say you have nothing to hide, be willing to sit down and be interviewed by him under oath, and you have nothing to lose when you do it under oath because it's just as much a crime to lie not under oath as under oath. And respond to the questions and try to wrap up the inquiry. That is the best advice he could possibly get.
That's what he said yesterday when he left for Davos. Oh, I'm fine with sitting down under oath, answering questions. That's the better tact. I always said it would have been a ridiculous idea. I wouldn't have fired Comey when he did. I would have cleaned the whole intel community out.
I agree with you. I think that started the whole problem.
That was a huge mistake. Huge mistake. Scott, I want to go with you very quickly on this. We'll move to text and go to the congressman. Scott, the idea of firing Mueller, the New York Times, you can look at me now. The New York Times is going nuts with this. The president has the constitutional prerogative to do it. I mean, he's a regular guy. I mean, he's a businessman. He's used to firing people when he doesn't like them. Is this a big bombshell in your eye?
It's a big bombshell because it's Donald Trump. The idea that he followed his lawyer's advice, thank goodness for that. I'll have to give that GOP lawyer that. But the idea, here's the bottom line, though, and what's really behind this. Donald Trump really thinks DOJ works for him. He thinks everybody in the federal government works for him. They really don't.
Yeah.
They represent the people for the United States of America.
But he's a chief executive officer,
He may be, but he can't fire someone legitimately who's investigating them without turning this into a constitutional crisis. It's fundamentally wrong.
It's not
the AG.
No, you're making a point of politics, and I agree with you.
Right.
Pragmatically and appearance-wise, it would look terrible. But as a constitutional matter, as Professor Dershowitz pointed out, as the chief executive officer of the country, the head of the executive branch, he has the authority to fire anyone. He could fire Mueller right now.
It doesn't mean he has to do it.
Of course not. But that's what your lawyers are.
But he thinks that. My point is he thinks that.
Yeah, hold on. Let's go to
DOJ works for him.
Well, Professor Dershowitz, you do expect, and every president expects, some loyalty from the people who work under him. It means you don't go off half-cocked on an issue. If he thinks the Russia investigation is ridiculous, he's going to express his frustration. I have no problem with that. But then we got to get to DeSantis.
I have a problem, but it's the problem with the Constitution. The framers made a terrible mistake by combining two offices together, one the advisor to the president in a justice matter, and the other the chief prosecutor. Most other countries divide those functions.
All right, well, we're not going to redo
the chief prosecutor is independent.
All right, yeah, we can't redivide. Let's go.
That's not going to
Let's
change.
go to DeSantis. Ron, I think we covered that issue. Let's move on to these the missing texts. They were discovered. A lot of people thought you had to go to the NSA for these texts, but they found them, including one interesting text in particular. Strzok and Page discussed via text how many personnel from DOJ and FBI would be included in the Clinton investigation. And they said, one more thing, she might be our next president. The last thing you need is us going in there loaded for bear. You think she's going to remember or care that it was more DOJ than FBI? Strzok says, agreed. I called Bill and relayed what we discussed. He agrees. I will email you and blank, redacted, same. Does that indicate a more of a kid gloves treatment to Hillary in that one text, or are we making too much of that? Ron?
Well, I think it does, but that's not the only thing we have. I mean, we have the whole investigation and how it was conducted, and at all the inflection points, they were bending over backwards not to make a case against Hillary, writing the memo 2 months before they interviewed her, changing grossly negligent, which is criminal culpability, to extreme carelessness. So I think it's yet one more data point that these two folks in the FBI did have political bias. But I also think, the FBI said and the DOJ, oh, we can't find these things. It was just like the IRS with Lois Lerner's emails. They didn't even really look for them. And then here the Inspector General gets them in the next 2 days. So I want to know who was responsible for sending that response to Congress saying that they were deleted, because that was not true.
That's odd. And also, Schiff spoke out. I want to play this. Adam Schiff spoke out, I guess it was earlier today, about what Republicans' tactics are here. Let's watch.
The Republicans, many of them, are all too desperate to distract attention from the Russia probe and try to put the government on trial. This has been a strategy for quite some time now. And even when they have no basis to do it, it doesn't stop them from making the most scandalous accusations against these professionals at the FBI.
Yeah, Chris Matthews also said.
I'm not a Republican.
Yeah. No, we're not. We're talking about. It's directed at the congressman. But let me just say. Chris Matthews also said, since when do Republicans have such a problem with law enforcement? Well, you could flip it on them and say, since when did liberals not have concerns about the abuse of authority by federal law enforcement?
That's exactly right.
The reason
Congressman first and then Alan.
But that's exactly what they're
doing.
doing.
The thing is, I have military background and law enforcement, and I can tell you the reason why I support law enforcement, and this is the same reason why I'm upset about what I've seen, because that's not representative of law enforcement. These are people who were not doing the job the way it's supposed to be done. And in order to have confidence in this system, if people are not behaving properly, if there was abuses, you need oversight over those, and people need to be held accountable. To just act like these agencies should be able to go on with no oversight, no accountability, that is not something that I want to sign up for.
Professor, and then I want to go to Scott.
There's no question that Strzok should have recused himself. He knew, before anybody else did, about his own biases, and he should be fired now. No person in the FBI, no Justice Department official should not recuse themselves when they've written those kinds of emails, those kinds of texts, those kinds of messages, and his failure to recuse himself from the investigation, for me, is a fireable offense.
Scott,
but he certainly has done that. He said what's bothersome about this is how politics and the GOP and the House and Senate have politicized and weaponized this information that they're receiving by a subpoena, and then picking and choosing parts of it and using it to discredit DOJ and FBI. It's wrong. That's why criminal investigations ought not be commented on until they're complete. And the allegations against the Democrats or DOJ and FBI are so negative, it's unnecessary and inappropriate.
Right. I think the question we're going to determine is whether the FISA process was weaponized to try to stop Trump from becoming president,
a lot of other information
or after.
that corroborated that memo.
We'll see.
Can't focus on that memo alone.
Yeah, well, we'll see in the full context. Gentlemen, great segment as always.